To understand London in the 19th century is to step into a world of sensory extremes, a sprawling metropolis that was simultaneously the capital of the world and a crucible of human endurance. By 1801, the city had already achieved a staggering milestone, with its population crossing 1 million people for the first time, a number that would explode exponentially in the decades to follow. At the heart of this expansion was the River Thames, which served not merely as a waterway but as the absolute lifeline of trade, transport, and daily survival for the city's inhabitants. From the vantage point of the docks, which by the century's end would become the busiest on Earth, one could see the physical manifestation of the British Empire's power. Ships from every corner of the globe crowded the water, their masts creating a dense forest against the grey horizon, fueling a global trade network that brought exotic goods to the wealthy, while the labourers who unloaded them struggled to feed themselves. However, this industrial dominance came at a terrifying ecological and human cost. As the Industrial Revolution took hold, it transformed London forever, replacing the rhythms of the past with the relentless clanking of machinery and the hiss of steam. Factories sprang up like weeds, offering jobs that drew thousands from the countryside, but these opportunities brought with them dangerous working conditions and a pollution crisis of unprecedented scale. The atmosphere of 19th century London was defined by its air, a heavy, choking blanket of coal smoke that darkened the sky and turned high noon into a twilight of grime. By the late 19th century, this air pollution had evolved into a serious, life-threatening hazard, with coal smoke filling the lungs of every citizen and wrapping the architecture in a constant, impenetrable haze. This was the era of the pea-soupers, fog so thick that gaslighting, which had transformed the city's nightlife and made the streets safer for trade, struggled to penetrate the gloom. Beneath this toxic canopy, the city was a study in contrasts. In the 1870s, London was clearly a city of extremes, where unimaginable imperial wealth rubbed shoulders with destitute poverty. While the Great Exhibition of 1851 stood as a glittering symbol of industrial progress and innovation, it effectively masked the desperate struggles of the everyday Londoner living in the shadow of its Crystal Palace. The Thames itself, though worshipped as a source of life, had become dangerously polluted, a churning conveyor belt of waste and disease. Yet thousands of workers continued to toil along its banks, depending on its foul waters for their very livelihood. This was a city that never truly slept, driven by a ceaseless energy where bridges connected expanding districts and facilitated the constant, restless movement of people and commerce, day and night. The domestic reality of 19th century London was often a grim testament to the city's inability to house its exploding population. By the mid-19th century, the rapid and uncontrolled growth of the capital had created vast, sprawling slums, where the concept of personal space was virtually non-existent. Inside these crumbling tenements, families lived tightly packed together, often sharing single rooms where privacy was rare and the air was stagnant. Overcrowded housing defined life for the urban poor, creating an environment where health risks were constant and immediate. Sanitation was a persistent failure. Clean water was not guaranteed, and for many, daily survival depended entirely on public pumps scattered sporadically across the city. This lack of basic hygiene infrastructure meant that illness spread with terrifying speed through the cramped quarters. Disease and poor sanitation were so prevalent that many families faced the loss of loved ones as a regular, heartbreaking occurrence, and life expectancy remained painfully low. Medical care was limited and often experimental, with hospitals frequently too overcrowded to effectively serve the masses, leaving death as a constant, hovering presence in the lives of the working class. For those who fell through the cracks of this precarious existence, the situation was even more dire. For the poorest citizens, workhouses stood as a feared last refuge. Life inside these institutions was harsh by design, intentionally grueling to discourage any dependence on public aid, reflecting a society that often viewed poverty as a moral failing rather than a systemic issue. Outside the workhouse walls, the struggle to earn a living consumed every waking hour. Women formed a vital but often exploited part of London's workforce, earning meagre wages for long hours of physically demanding labour. Children, too, were swept into the machinery of survival. While education was slowly expanding for many working-class children, school remained a rare luxury rather than a daily reality. Instead of learning in classrooms, they often navigated the dangerous streets or worked in factories. Yet, the streets themselves offered a form of sustenance. Street markets served as the backbone of daily life, providing the only place where many Londoners could purchase affordable food and necessities. Because there were no restaurants for the poor, street food played an essential role in fueling the workforce. Hot pies sold from wooden carts were not a luxury, but a necessity. Simple, warm meals shared briefly by factory workers and dock labourers before they returned to their long shifts. In this harsh ecosystem, small street services turned pavements into places of work, proving that in London, survival was an active, relentless pursuit. Amidst the smoke and struggle, a complex nervous system of connection began to bind the sprawling city together, transforming London into a modern organism. The 1840s marked a pivotal shift with the revolution of the postal system, which fundamentally altered daily life by democratizing communication. For the first time in history, ordinary citizens could afford to send written words across the chaotic metropolis, making the postman a familiar and cherished figure on every street. Trudging mile after mile in all weather, his arrival was a daily ritual that brought relief, worry, or quiet hope to households cut off from one another by the city's vastness. In a city defined by noise and relentless labour, the simple, tactile sound of a letter sliding through a wooden door served as a powerful reminder that human connection still existed. This flow of information was further accelerated by the rise of newspapers, which became the booming voice of the city, spreading news faster than ever before. Small but crucial participants in this information economy were the newsboys, whose shouts contributed to the city's auditory landscape. Simultaneously, the physical landscape was being reshaped by the railway mania of the 1840s. Railways shrank distances and completely reorganized the perception of time and travel. Before the advent of electric transport, the streets themselves were a ceaseless clatter of horse-drawn omnibuses, carrying thousands of people across the city every day and weaving the disparate districts into a cohesive whole. Yet, London was more than just a machine of commerce and transport. It was a community held together by resilience and shared spaces. Despite the crushing hardship, family bonds remained the glue that held daily life together. The church played a central role in this community architecture, offering not just spiritual guidance but essential social support to those teetering on the edge of poverty. For moments of escape, public parks offered rare sanctuaries of rest and reflection. Green lungs where the weary could briefly retreat from the crowded grey streets. The streets themselves offered small mercies too, with street performers bringing fleeting moments of music and relief to the bustling thoroughfares. As the century progressed, a modern police force began to take shape, aiming to carve order out of the chaos and maintain safety in a society that was changing at breakneck speed. By the end of the 19th century, London stood on the precipice of a new era, sculpted by 100 years of struggle, labour, and unprecedented transformation. It was a city of stark contrasts, of shadows and light, wealth and destitution, that shaped lives and stories that would echo well into the next century. Ultimately, London was more than its stone buildings and choking smoke. It was defined by the heartbeat of its people, resilient, enduring, and undeniably alive.